see, what do we do here? It's 6 o'clock. Well, it's 6 o'clock. Call the meeting to order for the Planning Commission. We have a notice of temporary procedures. Is there anything that you might need to be? Do you want me to turn this on?
Yes.
You do? Okay. There we go, because I'm hearing a reverb. Okay.
We gotta keep that mic on there. I don't know when I can.
He's loud.
I can hear you.
Shall we proceed? Are we in order? Okay. Do we have any instruction for the webinar ID, et cetera? Angelica?
The microphone.
The San Benito County Planning Commission welcomes your comments.
Maybe do it at the microphone.
On the mic.
Thank you. CMAP is also. The San Benito County Planning Commission welcomes your comments. Each individual speaker will be limited to a presentation total of 3 minutes. If participating on Zoom, select the Participants tab and click the Raise Hand icon. If you are using a phone, please press *9 to raise your hand. When your turn arrives, you will hear that you have been unmuted. At this time, state your first name, last name, and county you reside in for the record. Thank you.
Okay.
Pledge allegiance.
Oh, yeah, whoops.
Okay, just checking out if there's anything else. Shall we have the Pledge Allegiance then? Thank you. Commissioner Gibson?
Ready, salute. I
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Do we have roll call, please?
Let's note for the record that all commissioners are present. Thank you.
All commissioners are present, thank you. Acknowledgement of certificate of posting. Been posted and everything's under control. Perfect. On the consent agenda, do we have any items that need to be concerned with?
Nope, I
Nope.
don't have any comments.
I'll have a motion to accept.
I move to approve the consent agenda.
I second that.
Including,
All those?
including the minutes of
Including the draft
September
minutes.
16th.
Including the minutes, yes, thank you.
September 16th, 2020.
Of September 16th, 2020. Thank you.
I second that.
All those in accord?
Yes.
Aye.
Yes.
Aye.
All right. Department announcements. The County of San Benito and Resource Management Agency would like to welcome and introduce our new RMA Director, Benny Young.
Welcome.
Thank you, Madam Chair, Commissioners. My name is Benny Young. I've been here 8 days now. Actually, the 8th day is not over just yet. I'm a 45-year public servant. I'm a civil engineer by education and training, but I've spent most of that career in public administration, 3 cities, 3 counties, including the county of Monterey, from 2011 through the better part of 2017. And it's my honor and privilege to now be of service to the citizens of San Benito County. It's been my honor and privilege to be a public servant for the entirety of my career, straight out of Civil Engineering College to the from the University of Arizona to the city of Tucson, and where I retired in 2008, and I've continued to work in local government, and it's just kind of the calling that I adhere to and am so thrilled and thankful for, and I look forward to serving all of you and being a part of the team here in San Benito County, and it's just good to be here. I think you're on the cusp of some wonderful things here, and I'm so pleased to be a part of it. Be happy to answer any questions you might have.
Commissioners, do you have any?
Thank you all for what you do for the citizens of San Benito.
Well, we look forward to working with you, Mr. Young.
Thank
I am sure that it's going to be a prosperous one in the coming year.
Thank you.
Thank you.
It's going to be good, but not easy.
Yeah, nothing's considered easy anymore. Let's see.
So my apologies in some of the arrangement on the agenda. We generally have commissioner comments following towards the end of the agenda, but with the computer accepts special hearings a little differently than regular hearings in the computer. So this is where it landed. If you wish to move that later or have comments at this time, it's your prerogative.
Oh, I see what you mean. Yes.
No, that was my only comment, was the moved.
So we'll reserve comments until the end of the hearing. Is that what I'm understanding? Very good. Public hearing, Resource Management Agency. Mr. Young, public hearing, conduct a public hearing regarding the amending inclusionary housing ordinance regulations in San Benito County to include, but are limited to the following items: additional of rental housing, include the commercial construction, replace minimum square footage, amend for sale inside units,
What?
Amend off-site, terms of affordability, and update the Housing Advisory Committee, and eliminate reduction of impact fees are to be considered. And recommending the approval of the Housing Advisory Committee bylaws. So, shall we proceed?
Yeah, thank you very much, Madam Chair. This has been an ongoing effort, and it's been spearheaded by our housing coordinator for the city of Hollister and the county of San Benito, Jamila Saka, in partnership with efforts from Ariel Goodspeed, our senior planner in the RMA, with strong participation also by Dulce and others at the administration office with an ad hoc team. And we're here to present proposed ordinance changes and enhancements for your recommendation to the Board of Supervisors. So leading the presentation at this point will be Jamila Saka.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. That was a really good synopsis. I appreciate it. And just as a little bit of a preface, along with that great synopsis, is during this time we have, or about a year ago, created an ad hoc committee. So the ad hoc committee is comprised of 2 members of the Planning Commission, 2 members of the Board of Supervisors, and then any members of the public who have been attending the meetings as well. So that's where a lot of these recommendations have been comprised, is through this ad hoc committee, just so you all are aware. I am going to switch over to a PowerPoint in a moment to go through some of the great details that we have described in our staff report and then in our attachments as well. As we go through up to how you guys would like to proceed, if you want to have questions as we move forward and go through each slide, I'm more than welcome to do that, because I know sometimes it's hard to move forward without asking some of the questions. So however the chair and other members feel comfortable with as we continue, just let me know, and we can be able to proceed as well. Okay, so tonight I'm just going to go through parts of the PowerPoint. I want to talk about the purpose of the amendments, the timeline for tonight. So as we proceed, you're understanding that, yes, this is the first reading at Planning Commission, and then our goal eventually is to take it to Board of Supervisors, and then to discuss the changes as well. So part of the purpose for these amendments is there was some information that was somewhat missing in the ordinance. So as staff was reviewing the information, we also decided that there were portions that needed clarification. So as we determined that there are some larger portions that needed clarifications, that's when we decided to create the ad hoc committee and be able to begin to work as a team. Tonight, included in your packet was the public notice that was published, a staff report, the created bylaws, the red line version of the ordinance, so where you can be able to actually see the things that were changed, the tables that we will be amending, and then the attached resolution as well. So tonight, this is our estimated timeline in regards to the amendments to the ordinance. Tonight is our Planning Commission meeting. Our goal is to have the notice to the Board of Supervisors this week, and then it would be circulated in the newspaper the following week for the Board of Supervisor to be placed on the Board of Supervisor agenda on November 17th, 2020. And then depending on how, tonight ends, if it does move forward with the recommendation, then move to the Board of Supervisors. Then lastly, there would be a 30-day review period as well. So that's just our estimated timeline so that we can be able to move forward. One of the first changes that we wanted to discuss tonight is in the section, chapter 21.03.001, section D. We wanted to expand the definition in the ordinance to capture both for sale and rental units. Currently, right now, it just says like housing units, doesn't necessarily specify that a developer or individual can provide both for sale and rental units. In addition, in that section, we also wanted to include a section that has a recapturing besides a resale restriction. So how it typically works with below market rate or inclusionary housing is that the house is restricted for a certain number of years. We have found most recently with our Riverview 2 project that based on types of funding, resale restrictions are not necessarily allowed by the state currently. So with one of our grants that we're receiving with the project, we are giving the example of a shared equity agreement, which means that the homeowner who receives the down payment assistance will have to pay back the down payment and then a portion of the shared appreciation. So we wanted to add that as a potential option for a type of resale restriction, partly because of some of the changes at state level. In connection with the idea of adding rental units, we also wanted to include the definition of extremely low income. Right now in the ordinance, it's not necessarily clarified, and we also wanted to include that so that if a developer does decide to pay in lieu fees, that we can have flexibility to be able to use those in lieu fees potentially for future extremely low income units. That's something that's not clarified in the ordinance, and that's something that we wanted to capture. And this is where we get a little bit more grand with some of our amendments and changes. So this is where it might get a little bit, not necessarily confusing, but feel free if I need to repeat things or rephrase things, I definitely can. So in chapter 21.03.006, it talks about on-site units. In the current ordinance, it has the language that 50% of the inclusionary units are expected to be a minimum of 3 bedrooms. The ad hoc committee has advised or recommended to remove that language. They also suggested to remove the minimum square footage, and a next slide will provide a little bit of a more visual. And so that square footage, their suggestion is to remove it. Instead, the ad hoc committee is deciding to provide different language, which indicates that with on-site inclusionary units, in order for them to look similar to the other market rate units, the suggestion is that a minimum size should not be less than 80% of the average sizes of the market rate units for rental or ownership units. So meaning that the on-site units do look comparable to any of the market rate units. And then this is just a table of what's currently written versus what is proposed. So again, the minimum of 50% being 3 bedrooms. The proposal is to remove the statement. Again, with the current ordinance, those are the minimum square footages that are currently listed in the ordinance. For 2 bedroom, it's 900, 3 bedroom, 1,150 square feet, and 4 bedroom, 1,360 square feet. And so the proposal is to remove all those statements. And again, as stated before, that the average, that the on-site inclusionary units would be no less than 80% of the average of the market rate units. In the same section of the ordinance, it talks again about on-site included units. The recommendation is to maintain the 15% on-site requirement, but again, to expand it to indicate both for sale and rental on-site units. This is where the recommendation has altered versus what's currently written in the ordinance. Is for sale, it would be for moderate and low income households. So 10% of the anticipated units would be for the moderate units, and then 5% would be for the low income units. For the rental, we would be targeting households at the 5% for median income level, 5% for low income, and 5% for very low income for on-site ownership and then rental units as well. So this is what would be included in a development. And I'm just going to go through parts of the table so we can be able to kind of visualize that change or that recommendation. So this is what's currently written in the ordinance now. You will see that the on-site requirement, again, is 15%, and recommendation is to keep it at 15%. But what's currently written is that for on-site, the expectation is to provide moderate, low, and very low income units. The major change that is changing, and that's in the next slide, is that we are proposing to delete the very low income table or column and to have that be for more moderate income households. So this is what's currently written, and if it's okay with you, I was going to move forward to the proposed. And this is the proposed on-site. And so at this time, again, like I stated, we would maintain the 15% requirement, but 10% of the units would be for moderate and 5% would be for low-income households for the on-site homeowner units. So typically it may be a single-family home. Any questions so far as you're reviewing the tables? Yes.
Through the chair, somewhere the 1 through 11 didn't get on the table.
I was going to have that as a later slide to discuss that, so I wanted to just first compare what's currently written and then discuss that proposal. This was, at the time that we made the tables, we just didn't make that edit.
Oh,
so
okay.
That's something that I wanted to discuss here as well, but if we decide to move forward, then yes, everything would be adjusted accordingly.
Okay. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And the next slide is just related to, oh, sorry for interrupting. The next slide would be related to the on-site rental units. And so I apologize, this was one error that was made in the attachment, is that when we discussed things as an ad hoc, we wanted to ensure that when we do have on-site units, especially on-site rental, is that we are targeting for the lower income households. So you would see that this slide or that the table adjusts so that the first unit on-site rental or the one mandated on-site rental unit would actually start at the very low income category rather than the median income category. But once you reach a certain number, there is an equal amount between all 3 income categories, so 5% at each level. In the table, you will see a section that does say a fractional fee. So basically what that means is, 15% times the number of units in development may not always be a complete number like 15, 16, 20. So what the fractional fee means is that the developer applicant would be expected to either pay that 0.3, or they could also build another unit as well. So that's what that portion means, where it says plus fractional fee.
Jamila,
Yes.
may I interrupt you? These on-site rental units, who is purchasing them to rent?
So it can depend, and that's something that we do expand later on in the amendments to the ordinance, is that it could be managed by a nonprofit, something like CSDC or CHISPA, where they are the owner and manager, or, it could actually also be the developer, depending on what they would like in their portfolio.
Mhm.
So there wouldn't necessarily be, it could go either way. There wouldn't be a mandate from the county.
Okay, and so the rentals would be apartments, grouped multi-family dwellings?
Most likely, yes.
Uh-huh. Okay, good, thank you.
And I have a slide later too where we expand, because the ordinance doesn't necessarily say that it could be multifamily and things like that. So
Mhm,
yes, most likely the rental units would be geared towards a multifamily unit. The next one is for the section, chapter 21.03.007, and this discusses the off-site affordable units. And so off-site affordable units is an option for the developer. So if they don't necessarily want to or cannot provide for some reason on-site, they do have to prove why they can't provide it on-site, but if this becomes an option, we are maintaining the percentage at 20%. So what's currently written in the ordinance is if a developer must or is accepted to provide the units off-site, that they do provide more. And so similarly, to reflect the same for on-site, we kind of want the same breakdown for the ownership units and rental units. So we will maintain the 20%, but then what we will do is target it a little bit differently. So for instance, for rental units, and I'll show the table next, is that again, we want to target for lower income. So we would have 5% median, 10% low, and 5% very low for the rental units. And I will show that in the next slide. And so this is the breakdown when it is for the on-site ownership units. And so just looking at the very bottom, if we have 20 more units, there would be 8% for moderate income, 6% for low income, and 6% for very low income, and that would equate to the 20%. And then depending on the size of the development is what the expectation is for how many off-site units they are expected to provide. And then next is the table related to, backtrack, I forgot. So this one is what's currently written in the ordinance. I forgot to state that, sorry. So again, our proposal is to remove the very low category and have that be targeted more towards our rental units. So this table is the proposed off-site homeownership requirement. My apologies for the confusion. And so that for moderate income, we would provide a 12% requirement, and then for low income, it'd be an 8% requirement at the 20 units or more. And then rental would be broken down just slightly different. So for off-site, the requirement is a minimum of 5% moderate, 10% low, and then 5% very low income. Any questions so far regarding any of the tables or any of the proposed amendments?
I have some comments, but I'll wait till
Oh.
later in the conversation after your presentation.
Okay, thank you. Next is the section chapter 21.03.10, section F, and it discusses terms of affordability. So what this section discusses is when it comes to the construction of affordable units, one of the biggest things is preserving the affordable units. We want to ensure that future families can be able to sustain the home, but also if there, for any reason, that family decides to sell the home, that it could also be sold to a family of the same valued income or the same income category. So this ensures and maintains that with our affordable housing unit and numbers, that we are maintaining that number. So this is just basically a preservation factor. And so currently written, and what we'll maintain is that for for sale units, there is a minimum of a 30-year term of affordability. So that expectation means is if a homeowner decides to come into an agreement with the county and to have a below market rate home, that they can maintain the home for 30 years. At the end of the 30th year, the county will release the resale restriction, and then they will no longer have any resale restrictions with the county. They can decide to sell it at market rate. They can do basically whatever they would like to do with the home. If they decide to sell the home prior to the 30th year, that's when the county does limit the price of the resale. That again is to ensure that the next family who has the home can have it at an affordable rate and be able to maintain that home. With that though, it will restart the 30th year. So if the first homeowner decides to sell at the 20th year, the second homeowner will then again have to restart that term of affordability for an additional 30 years. The next one, which has been recommended by the ad hoc, because it didn't clarify the option for rental units, there was no term of affordability that specified one for rental units. So we have determined for rental units to have a minimum of 55 years. A part of the reason for this is a lot of different tax credits and different loans do request for rentals to have a minimum of 55-year term of affordability. And then this also just ensures that we can be able to maintain those units as affordable units for a longer period of time. The next section, which we partly amended, but then also expanded as well, is our Housing Advisory Committee. So within the ordinance, we have created a committee. So this committee helps, kind of similar to the ad hoc, making any recommendations, having recommendations if we do have in lieu fees, how to be able to use those in lieu fees. And so what we would like to do is increase the number of members in the committee. We would like to increase the members of the public to 3. So our goal is to have a member of the affordable housing development community, maybe a member of the building developer community, and then lastly, someone with a financial or accounting background, given we may be dealing with thousands of dollars. And then lastly, tonight, along in your packet, is to establish the bylaws for this committee, so that in the next coming year, we can be able to have that as a solidified committee within the Board of Supervisors and Planning Commission. The next section that I wanted to address, or one of the next sections, is in Chapter 22.03.012, Section F, and this is under the collection and use of in lieu fees. This section is the section regarding impact fees. And so at the last meeting, at the ad hoc meeting, there was a recommendation to remove the language regarding impact fees. So what's currently written in the current ordinance is that a moderate income unit, or when an affordable project comes to the county and it's 100% affordable, we have so far been providing an incentive for those that are 100% affordable. And so moderate units are only expected to pay 50% of the impact fees. Low-income units are required to pay 25% of the impact fees. And at this time, very low-income units are exempt from paying the impact fees. It has been a recommendation from the ad hoc committee to remove the language regarding the reduction of impact fees and provide no incentive to projects that are 100% affordable, and that the anticipation is for them to continue to pay, like other developments, full impact fees. On the flip side, when this proposal did come, I do want to let Planning Commission know and other staff members know that I did receive a lot of comments via email and via phone calls regarding this removal of the impact fee. So I did want to bring it potentially as a discussion item tonight and something that we can work through. Most recently, or even potentially, this reduction of impact fees could assist the Riverview 2 project, which is the affordable, or 100% affordable housing project off Southside and Hospital Road. And it has been used on different projects at the migrant camp. And so one thing that I did receive from members of the public regarding and seeking to maintain the reduction of impact fees is that they just felt that it provided an incentive that we could be able to maintain for longer periods of time than just that one-time payment. It's been helpful, at least from members of the public that have expressed it. It's been helpful for their specific projects or even trying to pencil in and being able to save some money along the way. So I just wanted to bring that up and see if there's any questions or comments regarding this proposal, because I did receive some comments from the public as this staff report was being circulated.
Through the chair, were these people in attendance at the meetings, or are these other people?
Yes, they are in attendance of the meeting.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Gibson, your microphone is pointed very far away from you. Next time. I got it, though. Thank you.
Through the chair,
I'm confused.
yeah,
Sorry.
can't find the switch here. I guess it's on now. Through the chair, there are some state law issues with regard to waiver or reduction of impact fees for affordable housing units as well. Whether or not it's included in this ordinance, it is one of the components that an affordable housing developer can request of the county, and one or more of the elements requested would have to be granted by the county. So whether or not we include this in this ordinance, codifying it in the ordinance, it still could have a reduction of impact fees on a case-by-case basis, as it were, in accordance with state law.
Yeah, well, I would imagine that considering the state law preempts that whatever we do place in this ordinance is always a possibility that it will be altered.
Yes, state law preemption is something that has to be determined on a case-by-case basis. I can't make a blanket statement about under what circumstances it applies.
Correct. Thank you.
Jamila, through the chair, may I? I'm sorry, I'm just a little thick on this, and I'm thought I had it down. So part of our ordinance and our efforts is to really get stuff built in the ground and not really accept in lieu fees. And so,
Two different things. Go ahead.
correct, but there's incentives and disincentives. And the screen shows that we presently collect some impact fees when someone is proposing to construct units at different income levels. And then the proposal here is to make it an even slate and apply the same impact fees as we would for a market rate residence.
Yes, and currently as written, it's only when the development is 100% affordable.
When it's only, so the whole qualifier for the whole screen is for a 100% affordable project,
Yes,
of which we only have two examples in the community right now.
at this time, yes.
Okay.
Right. If I may also, I think the use of the term in lieu fee is perhaps inappropriate in terms of the discussion that we're having, because an in lieu fee is a developer paying a fee instead of building an affordable unit,
Correct.
as opposed to affordable units being responsible for the payment of impact fees. So, and I think what we're talking about on this slide here is impact
impact
fees,
fees.
not in lieu fees.
Yeah, thank you very much for that. That's where I kind of got my eyes crossed. So for the public and for us here is if we were to make it more clear is in the title is a collection and use of impact fees. Would that be,
We
is
can
that,
definitely
is
make,
that your intent, Ms. Haka?
we can definitely make that amendment. Actually, what's written in the ordinance is the title collection and use of in lieu fees.
Okay. Well,
And
we know that we've really needed, what was Megan's term, a facelift on so many of our ordinances, so we can, we'll get some clarifying language. Thank you.
Mhm.
A facelift with all these masks on.
Sorry, I just want to make a note real quick. And then one thing that I just wanted to highlight in terms of the amendments that have been made in the redlined version is that we really wanted to expand options for developers when it comes to providing on-site included units. For it to be, you know, both homeownership and rental, for it to be a mixture of townhomes, you know, depending on the zoning, they can be able to expand it. It doesn't just have to be a single family home. We also included the combination of providing both inclusionary and in lieu fees, if that's the combination that would want to be made. As written, the option is still to provide land donation and offsite construction. So those two have maintained, but I did want to let you know that we did provide some other alternatives in terms of expanding the idea beyond just a single family home that is provided on site. And next, this is what Commissioner Gibson was referring to in terms of a proposal from the ad hoc committee. Is currently right now, it's broken down that 1 to 4 units don't necessarily have to provide an on-site unit or pay a fee. And depending on the next level between 5 and 6, there is a fee that is expected to be paid. And then effective the 7th unit in a development, the expectation of an on-site unit is expected. And so what the ad hoc committee has proposed is that developments from 1 to 10, there is no expectation of an in lieu fee or an on-site unit. And so that's something that I wanted to bring forward. And if that is an agreement of the Planning Commission, we would also be able to make that amendment as well.
But in the charts that you've just shown us, you've got 1 to 4 is 0 or none, and 5 to 6, there's a fee.
Yes, and that's what Mr. Gibson was referring to earlier when asking why it didn't look like their proposal. But I did want to confirm that's something that can be amended. So I wanted to basically discuss both. I wanted to show what the proposed would be without that change, and then discuss tonight if that's something that the Planning Commission would like to move forth with, is that the tables would actually not begin or would not be expected to provide an in lieu fee or an on-site unit until the 11th unit.
One consideration, if I may, one consideration that the commission and the committee might want to consider in terms of that is that by establishing this limitation, you would create an incentive for the development community to build nothing but small projects, which may or may not be something, whether or not that incentive would actually result in that carving up of projects to smaller sizes in order to avoid the affordable housing. It remains to be seen, but it's something that you might want to take into account in weighing this proposal.
But can we ask the commissioners for their opinions on that?
Okay.
Any thoughts?
Through the chair, if I can just explain. The reason that was increased was to assist the local builders. Since they buy their materials locally, they use local contractors, subcontractors, to try to provide a little extra incentive for the locals as opposed to the big boys that don't contribute anything to our economy. This was just a little thing for the local developers. There was no intention to give it to the big boys. And if they try to dice up a 2,000 home development into 10 unit applications, well, we'll have to deal with that down the road. But this was to incentivize the locals. because they're being, you know, a lot of our local contractors, whether it's plumbers or electricians or drywallers, they're all going to San Jose because there's nothing here. That's contributing to the traffic on 25 and 101. So if we can do anything to try to help keep them home, I think we should as a county, because we've been backwards for decades, and it's frustrating to a lot of people.
Through the sheriff. But by doing this, you're going to slow the growth down. And for anybody to do 1 to 10 units, it's going to be more costly than doing 100 units, cost-wise. So by doing the little projects or for the locals, it's going to slow down the growth, correct? That's what my understanding here is from letting the big developers come in. And then doing 1 through 10, it's going to cost more than doing 100 units. So the cost is probably going to rise on the homes. That's, I mean, I'm a contractor. You got very small, you got 1 or 2 units, it's going to cost you more than if you do 10 or 20 or 100. So my opinion, by doing this, is going to raise the price of homes. There's not going to be enough supply.
Why would it raise the price if you're exempting them from fees?
You're not going to exempt all of them for fees for 1 through 10.
Well, yeah, because they're small, and
You're
there's
gonna
not that
pay.
many of them. It doesn't
You're still
apply
going
to
you're still going to charge fees. I mean, you're not going to exempt all the. If everybody did 1 through 10, then you're not going to have to collect no fees on any of the construction.
Well, if the county allows a 2,000 home development to be applied for in 10-unit increments, then that would fall on the planning commission or the board to see what's going on, wouldn't it? I mean, if we can't see it happening, then there's something wrong with the people that are in charge.
I still think this is going to slow down the growth in San Benito County. And it's going to, my opinion, there's going to be less supply. So the demand's still going to be there regardless. It's still in the, so you're going to raise the price. And you still got to charge fees on, how's the county going to make any money if you don't charge fees on 1 through 10?
Still not following how it's going to increase the cost, though. This is a reduction of costs.
No, I'm,
Construction-wise, it's going to increase the costs.
let me interject. What I'm understanding is that you're expecting that there will be more local builders doing smaller groups of housing, and that they would probably be in the 10 unit category. But I'm not hearing that fees, like the impact fees, will not be eliminated.
No, that has
What
nothing
I'm
to do
hearing
with
is that the in lieu fee for an affordable unit would be
Correct.
eliminated.
They wouldn't be required to build a unit on a 1 through 10 unit development.
If I may, through the chair, so to kind of further expand, I think Robert Gibson's point is that right now, effective the 7th unit, development is expected to provide an on-site unit, an on-site affordable unit. And so what he is trying to express, I believe, is that 1 through 10 would not have to provide an affordable on-site unit, so they wouldn't necessarily have to reduce potentially their profit, basically, in providing that affordable unit, and they wouldn't have to pay an in lieu fee at all, 1 through 10. So they could decide what they would like to do, how big the home, whatever they would like to do for 1 to 10. But currently, as written, the moment development comes in at 7 or more units, we are demanding, or we are requiring, we are requiring inclusionary units. And so I think what he's trying to express is that we would not be requiring that from 1 to 10. And it'd be effective the 11th unit that we would be requiring this ordinance.
So through the chair for clarification purposes, as it stands now is on the 7th unit right now, as it stands is where we have it now. So we're pushing it back to the 11th, correct?
Partly, so at the 5 to 6 units, they aren't expected to pay a fee. For that, it's like not quite 1 unit, so they are expected to pay a fee. And then effective the 7th unit, you are expected to provide an on-site affordable unit.
Because at 7 units, you get an integer of
Right, so that's
1.
a fractional
You
fee.
get an
and then-
integer of when you multiply by 15%. A full,
Thank you.
if I could, Commissioner Rodriguez, please correct me if I'm wrong, but I think the point you were trying to make is there's certain economies of scale for large development, like per square footage, when you have these teams building a lot of houses, and that when there's a smaller project, they're kind of more customized and maybe more expensive per square foot.
That's correct.
Is that what you were trying to
Mhm.
point out? And that you thought people would change their projects that might be more plentiful to having maybe even larger lots, but custom homes at 10 units or less
Well-
to avoid? Is that what you were trying
What,
to
what I'm trying to
share?
get here is, if you start doing this 1 through 10 units, and then you get the big developers out, you're gonna cut down from building homes, which is gonna slow down the growth. So the bottom is that when you got less units, they're gonna sell for more, because they're not gonna be in control of what you can sell it for. So there can still be, the demand still coming in. We're not gonna stop it. The demand's here for homes. If you don't have homes, they just keep raising the prices. So what's gonna happen is gonna throw all the people that live here locally, well, if you're gonna build one home or 10 homes, you're gonna get more for that home if you build 1 to 10. So it's just gonna raise the prices here, like where they're going right now, they keep going up. And we have a lot of units going. So that's just my opinion.
So is it okay if I may expand on your thought? Are you explaining or stating basically that the idea of,
Well, the idea of this, I'm trying to get across is, you gotta try to stop the big developers coming in. They're not gonna wanna come and build a low-income housing. No one is. We gotta get some federal money and do the low-income projects.
okay, sorry, I
No.
just got a little bit confused. So at least with this 1 to 10, how I at first thought we're expressing was that at least the way it is written now, that we are collecting some sort of funding, or that we are providing an affordable unit. And that's how I perceived your comment. I wasn't sure if that is incorrect or not.
Well, you said there was gonna be no collection of fees, 1 through 10.
No collection of in lieu fees.
Yeah. Well, how are we gonna build a low income if you have no collection?
And I just wasn't sure if that's what your point
Yeah.
was. Okay.
Through the chair, how many applications have we had for under 10 units in the past 15 years? It shouldn't have an impact. It should be minimal, if at all. That's what I'm not understanding. It shouldn't slow down housing growth. I mean, this is just an inclusionary housing in lieu fee. It's
So you-
nothing major.
So you're gonna have a developer come in and build, say, he got 1,000 lots, then he's gonna start selling 10 lot increments?
Well, that would be up to the county to not see that happening. I mean,
It's gonna
if
happen.
we allow it,
It's gonna happen.
well,
They're gonna find a way around it. So I think we're defeating the whole purpose.
I think the Santana Ranch, a lot of these big things are phased, but they still go through the application process in one swoop, and then they sell them as they build them. I don't think the money that we're talking about here is a disincentive to anybody. That's my thought. I'm not understanding the argument that it's gonna hurt housing. I just, maybe Jamila understands it. I'm not grasping it, though. Or Tavin, if you could
Yeah.
help me out here.
Through the chair, though, I mean, for the ends that the ad hoc committee was trying to achieve of not disincentivizing local builders, for those ends of wanting them to be able to build here affordable, Commissioner Rodriguez, would there be another avenue to that other than, other than this that's on the screen right now?
My opinion is kind of confusing how this whole deal goes through.
I think the objective is to incentivize local builders, hire local guys, women, et cetera.
It's not gonna happen. I see it.
And you feel that that's...
I see it. Construction. I do construction. It doesn't happen. You can put everything you want on the books. The contractor's not gonna hire just local guys. It'd be nice, but it doesn't happen until something gets written in the ordinance that they have to hire local guys. And you can't do it because there's, laws and regulations. So that's my opinion. I'm a local contractor. They come in here and say, we're going to hire locals. All the developments here, they don't hire locals. They hire a minimum. Very few.
Yeah, there's not
I
a lot
mean,
of local.
Yeah, I've been a contractor for 35 years, so I know. Very few practices I get here in town. They bring everybody from out of town, or even out of state, for that matter.
Well, that's why, through the chair, that's why this is supposed to be an incentive to our local developers who have been building homes here for 30 or 40 years. That they get a little incentive for being locals and buying their materials locally and hiring local contractors. That's all this was. It wasn't a disincentive to anybody.
You still don't buy the materials local. If you're building one home, your material cost is going to cost more than if you go buy from out of town, large quantities.
Wow.
I know. I'm doing that. So.
Oh.
Well, if I may, through the chair, that's exactly why we, have these discussions at a technical level. And I always remember in the Supreme Court, right, it's not just the vote that happens, but sometimes it's the opposite argument that you want to hear. And so through the minutes capture and our notes, as we move forward the recommendation, which might not be 5-0, but as we move forward a recommendation to the Board of Supervisors, this can certainly be a point of discussion of where you had some differing opinions for what you had hoped to achieve. So I'm just kind of offering that as a leverage if you needed to move on to other subjects on this very heady subject of affordable housing, but
I know for the longest times I've worked at a lot of a town, and they had the developer, every 10th unit was to be sold at cost. I've been trying to implement this for years, and no one has done that.
You've been a custom home builder for how long now?
Oh, no, I've been in the business for 35 years.
For 35
So
years.
I've done a lot of homes as a subcontractor.
And how many did you ever have under construction the most at one time?
Well, no, not myself personally. I just do one or two. I don't. But on a lot of projects in out of town or different areas, they were demanding that the local guy that built, say he's going to build 100 units, 10 of those units were going to be sold at cost. And that kept some people, affordable homes, because then they don't have to put all the butter and ginger on them. They can just do the basics. The counties or cities will waive some of the impact fees so they can make that unit affordable. Right now, what they're doing is they're just building and putting it at market value or above market value, like Santana Ranch. Those homes are not worth what they're selling for, my opinion. Unless you guys in construction, hey. So they should have made it where every developer wants to develop here, do 10, 15% of the homes at cost and sell it to a local resident. I try to push that on other, oh no, it's not gonna happen. It worked in a lot of cities. San Jose was a good example. Salinas is a good example.
So
But-
would you recommend at this time, as your personal thought, to maintain the ordinance as is, as written, or?
I don't even like the way it's written,
Okay.
so.
In terms of the number of units of like what is expected, so 1 to 4
Yeah.
would be no fee
'Cause
still?
I don't think this is gonna work,
Okay.
my opinion. Unless I'm wrong, I mean.
Is there a construction association?
BIA,
Yeah.
they were at the ad hoc meetings.
Yeah, they, through the chair, our
Okay.
BIA, our local agency, regularly attended the meetings. I don't know if they were at the last one. I apologize, I don't have my minutes in front of me, but I believe they were for a period of time. And they didn't necessarily have any comment regarding this. Again, I think they're looking at the bigger developments that are hundreds or more units. So I don't think they were too concerned if we amended it to be 1 through 10 as no requirement or no in lieu fee. From my past recollection, there was no comments made from the BIA regarding this change, whether negative or positive. I just think they're looking at the bigger picture and they're looking at more of the requirements for their larger developments. than some of the smaller ones that we might be anticipating. We do have a few in the county that have been like 6-unit, smaller subdivisions. And so at that time, or, if it was current day, they would be anticipated to pay a fee. So that's something that I think Commissioner Gibson is proposing, is that, if we had this smaller subdivision, they would be able to save that money, and they wouldn't necessarily have to pay that in lieu fee that would go towards our fund, and that they can be able to build the 6 units. But at the same time, I do understand all the other comments that were made as well. So that's why we're here, to be able to see what recommendation your commission would like to do.
Well, if the commissioners feel that they've made enough comment on this particular note, that we move on to the next and make a notation that this is a point of discussion that should be carried forward, perhaps to the board, or back to the ad hoc committee to hash it out a little bit further.
Well,
I don't know.
through the chair, I think we can just make the amendment to the language when we send this on to the board, because the plan was to get this approved by the Board of Supervisors before the end of the year. If we send it back to the ad hoc, it probably won't happen.
I understand. Okay.
And we've been working with this, last 7 years? Trying to get this housing element. Doesn't get done. Everybody always has different opinions.
Oh, I'm sorry, I missed the
I
comment.
said, no, nothing gets done. It's been working on for 7 years, this exclusionary housing. And the county had some exclusionary housing years back, and they implemented, and they took it out, and it just keeps going back and forth.
Yeah, so.
This is getting done.
Yeah, at least at this time, we're not getting rid of it. We just want to
Cool.
make some clarifications. So thank you. The next point that I just wanted to discuss, and we are all taking notes here, so we'll make sure that we take all of your comments as well. And then a couple last simple points. I just wanted to let the Planning Commission know that in terms of what's written in the ordinance is that when an in lieu fee is established, that it would be part of our master fee schedule. It will not be written as a number in the ordinance, just to ensure that if we do need to update it annually, that we can just update the master fee schedule and not have to necessarily take an ordinance every single year to the Planning Commission and to the board. But the master fee schedule will get updated as needed as well. And so that's just something that, a point of clarification that wasn't discussed in the ordinance that we amended. And then I just also wanted to expand, and I've talked about it a moment ago as well, is that there are other compliance options for on-site units, and that it can be able to be a partnership with nonprofit developers, and to be able to work together to manage and to be able to provide those units as well. So it is something that we do and have expanded on that discussion so that it can be able to be managed that way if needed. And then one of the last points with clarification is when it comes to the payment of an in lieu fee, the developer doesn't necessarily get to decide to pay the amount. It does need to be reviewed by the Planning Commission. Then, if approved, must be reviewed by the Board of Supervisors. If approved, then the fee can be completely paid for. They do need to show points of record why they would like to pay the fee, or if it's just there could be a plethora of different reasons. But I just want it to be clear that it's not the developer's decision. It's here at the county that we have this option to review projects and decide if we want to accept the fee or to have the units be placed on site. It was just it was just clarified in the ordinance. And then one of the last points is home monitoring. That's a discussion item that comes up every so often, and I do want to let the commission know that I do complete monitoring every year on our inclusionary units. So we do have about 50 currently in the county, and so one of the main expectations is for the homeowners to maintain the home as their primary residence, to not necessarily rent out the unit, and that's something that will be maintained with both homeowners and renters as well. So we will ensure that the renters are qualified and have the eligible income to be able to reside in the rental units as well. And that's something that staff will do. And I know we, like I said, and from the beginning, we have had some discussion items, but at this point, just in terms of what's been presented so far, I just wanted to know if there's any other questions, comments or concerns, and notes that we can take. Okay. Well, thank you. I just want to then move on to the bylaws. And so that was also included in your agenda packet. When when our affordable housing ordinance was approved in 2016, written in there was to create a advisory committee. Unfortunately, that has not been established yet, and so this is what we need to do first, is establish our bylaws, and then we can be able to develop our committee through the Planning Commission and Board of Supervisors. And so at this time, the draft is before you, and I just want to ensure if there are any questions, comments, recommendations, but if approved, this will be our set of bylaws for our committee. Like stated previously, we do want to increase the number of public members for it to include a person of the nonprofit development world, building development world, and then someone with an accounting background as well. So it would be a committee of 7 individuals. And with our current ad hoc, which would be somewhat similar, we had 4. So we'd really want to engage with the public and be able to get their input.
Through the chair, Ms. Taka,
Yes.
so if a developer was proposing more than a fractional in lieu fee a payment for inclusionary housing, say they wanted to do pay for 5 houses, would that be first reviewed by this new committee here, the Housing Advisory Committee? Because the slide you had earlier said, the Planning Commission makes the decision. So if someone was proposing to do something other than build on site and just pay for that 0.5 that's left over, if they wanted to change that to pay for units that they should construct, do they go to both this advisory committee and then the Planning Commission?
They don't necessarily need to go to this advisory committee. Part of the purpose with the advisory committee is to provide recommendations for the use of potential in lieu fees, and to be able to engage in that aspect so that we have a separate party determining potential uses of future funding. So they don't necessarily have to go before this advisory committee to be then determined if they could go to the planning and then Board of Supervisors. So on page 2, section 4 is where it discusses
Duties.
The duties. I mean, the last one does say other functions as well that could be included, but mostly this is just kind of a review committee, not necessarily
So
a
like item
decision-making.
E doesn't mean that everything goes through them before the Planning Commission? It means only some things?
Yes, it would only be some things, particularly related to funding management, grant management, and expenditures of our in lieu fee fund. We can make that recommendation if we needed to, but this was just necessarily advisory to review uses of our fundings. Partly the reason why I think it doesn't necessarily need to go in front of the advisory committee is the advisory committee is comprised of 2 members of the Planning Commission and then 2 members of the Board of Supervisors. So those members would technically be seen as twice if it went through. So we wouldn't necessarily want them voting on a development at the advisory committee level and then seeing it again at the Planning Commission level. So I think that's where this is somewhat separate.
Thank you very much for the clarification.
Mm-hmm. Anything added? Any questions? Looking forward to having 2 of you be on the advisory committee next year, hopefully. It will be established. And then at this time, we were just looking for your final recommendation. So as the chair had presented earlier this evening, is in regards to the options related to our next steps. So tonight, once if the planning commission approves the amendments, like stated earlier in the timeline, it'd be moved forward to the Board of Supervisors. And then included in your packet as well is the resolution that would be reviewed and then signed and then taken to the Board of Supervisors as well. So at this time, staff does recommend for the amendments as written with the discussion item of the, drawing a blank, sorry. The units as to when would be required to provide a fee or provide on-site. And at this time, we would like to provide that recommendation.
That's what we're doing now.
Commissioners, comment,
Through the,
discussion?
Any public comments, maybe?
Are there any,
Oh, yes, sorry.
forget about this Zoom out there.
Sorry, my computer's really slow. Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you, staff and Planning Commission, for all your hard work on this. I just have a few comments. I think this is a solid document. One thing that I am a little concerned about is that market rate multifamily housing isn't addressed in this. I think that there's a massive missing middle in terms of housing that the city or the county are not addressing. I think it's great that we'll be addressing the low income and the moderate, but there are people who have decent jobs but don't make enough money to actually be able to afford to buy a house. So having apartment units being built at market rate would be very helpful. In terms to the exemption for the 1 to 10 units, I represent a couple local contractors, and they do buy their materials at McKinnon. They hire, I'd say, between 75 and 90% local subs, so that is something to take into consideration. I do have a concern about the 80% of average square footage for the on-site affordable for sale units. And the main concern is that a subdivision like KB Homes on Southside has minimum square footage of, say, 1,475 square feet and a maximum of 2,750 square feet. So when you average it out, you're going to have that minimum allowed size for the low-income units be higher than some of the market rate units that they're selling. I don't think that's necessarily what the ordinance is trying to do. So I think it may be better to combine the 80% with a minimum square footage like you had it before, and then say whatever's lower, because then you will still have that housing mix. I'm pretty sure what you're trying to do is just make sure that builders aren't building a super small unit that's on the affordable side. And then my last comment is really just a question on a large subdivision, like say 5 acres. Let's say you're going to do 20 units of 5 acres. How would you address the low income portion of that? Because it's very, very expensive to build a unit on 5 acres if you have to sell it as low income. And I think the community would probably get a better benefit if you compelled the builder to create deed restricted ADUs. I think you get more families into housing that way. Thank you very much for your consideration. Thanks.
Are there any further? No, that was the only one. No standbys? Okay. I bring it back to the commission. Comments, thoughts?
So maybe I'll start, just because I was part of the ad hoc committee. I thought it was a very collaborative process as we worked through the details. As Jamila mentioned, this process started over a year ago, and we had, I think, great participation from multiple members of the community. We also hired a consultant, which brought in some additional insight and work in terms of how other counties and jurisdictions are handling and managing inclusionary housing ordinances. So I thought the process was well run. And as I mentioned, that there was a lot of good discussions in terms of, each and every one of these elements as part of this housing ordinance. Again, the goal was, we knew we had some issues that we had to address that were blatantly not helpful in terms of our housing ordinance for the county. And the team that was brought together addressed each one of these issues. Is the ordinance perfect? I would say it's probably not perfect, but it does address a lot of what we know to be issues in terms of the current ordinance. There were some discussions around do we increase the number from 5 to 10 in terms of the first units that have to be included in the requirement to build the low-income housing units or participate in lieu fee. I'll be honest, I struggled a little bit in terms of, what was that going to do? In the end, I'm okay with making that change because, I'll wait for that to pass. Because I think that does provide a little bit of an incentive for those smaller developers who may otherwise only build 3 or 4 units. Now they may have the opportunity to build that 5th or 6th unit, where with the current ordinance, they have additional cost regarding that fractional fee that they would have to pay, which would disincentivize them from building those additional 2 or 3 units. Will we get a significant majority of new development just moving from 5 units to 10 units? I don't know. I don't think so. But it's something that we can look and see if there is something that we can help to incentivize the local builders to do that. And then on the other side, as you think about in terms of would a large developer who's going to build 50 units or 100 units or 200 units try to game the system? I think there's controls in place that we can do to manage that. I don't think they would go through the process to nickel and dime the county and submit proposals at a 10-unit clip level. If that does happen, we can always change the ordinance to make sure that doesn't happen. It doesn't happen today with the 5 units. There's nobody's coming in at 4 or 5 units a pop to do that, to kind of skirt that requirement. But I felt it was a good process. Great participation from the Board of Supervisors, from Commissioner Gibson, and as I mentioned, from the community at large. I thought it was a well-run process. And thank you, Jamila, for running that for us.
And Dulce.
And Dulce, sorry.
Through the chair, before I get into the whole issue about the number, there are some grammatical issues. Page 17. 21.03.011 under the creation of the Housing Advisory Committee. I guess it's a red line. It says 1 member from, and then the word from is scratched out, and then the affordable housing development expertise. I think we should replace the word the with affordable housing development expertise. Cross off the and put in with. I believe that's more correct. And then on page 18, at the very last few words, says subject to the approval of county council. I believe county council suggested that we delete that phrase at the last meeting, or perhaps the previous meeting, that it shouldn't be subject to county council's approval. Am I recalling correctly?
Which
Yeah.
line was that?
Let me,
Page 18, the last,
I
The very
remember
last
the same
statement.
comment. Thank you.
and that was it for grammatical issues. We just have to tackle the number that would be exempt from the ordinance.
Mr. Navarro?
Yeah, I also want to express a thank you to the ad hoc committee for putting it together as well, and for just the discussion around the amount of the units, because I think allows us to kind of dive deeper into whether or not or how we're going to be kind of grouping these potential projects together. I don't, me personally, particularly see. I don't think we see it now with the with the groupings of 5 or 6 mini groupings of the different housing projects. I don't think moving that number up to 10 will increase that as well, personally. And I do appreciate Commissioner Eggers' comment about if that does happen, we will be catching it because on a per project basis, and we can make an amendment then. So, thank you. I did have one small comment as well regarding the amendment with the master fee schedule. If we can get either get a presentation on that or just get it sent out to us whenever that's amended, because on the ordinance we won't have an actual fixed number or figure. It'd be good to have that when it's changed, just so we know what we're referencing when it is changed, especially now with the inclusion of like the extremely low and all those different terminologies in there that might differentiate between the in-use fees and all that. So that was just it.
That's a
on my end.
really great idea. Would you like it to be written in there in that sense that a copy is then presented to Planning Commission and other committees of the change and things like that?
That would be great if
Okay.
the fellow commissioners
Commission
are on
purposes,
board.
yeah, I think
I
that's
think
great.
that would be great,
I don't think
just
we're
for
involved.
increased transparency and just to have it kind of.
Yeah, I think that's a really
As-
great idea.
Thank you.
Well, I don't quite agree with everything, but there's gonna be a lot of loopholes, and I hope the county planning, or is gonna be in charges, watches all developers. But there's gonna be a lot of loopholes in this, they're open. That's my opinion. We gotta get this done.
Yes, definitely we need to get it done. And what I'm assessing from the comments of all the commissioners is that there are contractors out there that are local. There are a lot of smaller properties, or perhaps negotiable infill areas that could really benefit by somebody being incentivized to fill those areas. And it's just really difficult to objectively talk about inclusionary housing. It's something that has to be jump-started, and we have to move it forward. And as it gets reclaimed and hashed out and over in the next year or so as it's used, I think that's when we have to keep an eye on it at the Planning Commission and help our commissioners keep an eye on that too. So I am open to a motion that is to reject or approve. Let's see.
We did this in multiple steps. Is that?
Commissioner Gibson, would you care to take a stab at that?
I make a motion to approve the Housing Advisory Committee bylaws and recommend them to be approved by the Board of Supervisors. And to consider adoption of a resolution recommending that the Board of Supervisors adopt an ordinance amending Chapter 21.03 of the San Benito County Code relating to inclusionary housing land use regulations, making 2035 general plan consistency findings and determinations, and making appropriate findings and determinations under CEQA. With the two grammatical changes mentioned, and to codify that 1 through 10 be exempt from the ordinance, as well as updating the proposed tables to reflect that verbiage.
I second that motion.
Thank you, Commissioner Eggers. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
5-0.
Thank you, Commissioners. Well done. And I applaud the time and effort you've put into going over this. Ladies,
I should have started the meeting like that, so my apologies. I really was just so focused on other things, but I really did want to thank staff and I really thank the committee members because it's been nice to meet outside, kind of not outside of the work, but to be able to really dig deep and really have a professional discussion about something that affects our community and a community that majority of, we all live here. So I really appreciate everyone's time, effort, making these special meetings, reviewing notes, talking to us. I just thank you all and we can be able to move forward. So thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
I
Yeah.
recall when you were up there just trying to define low, middle, and very low income levels and exactly what we're talking about. And I think that from the get-go was extremely important to make that visual analysis, so to speak, so that we can look definitely at what we're dealing with.
You're right. It definitely takes a lot of people to kind of describe it, explain it, and there's just a lot of nuances, and we don't expect everyone to know everything or to be, automatically
Except
understand everything with it, but to listen in, to hear our opinions, and to hear opinions of the public as well really means a lot. Thank you.
Thank you.
Perfect, thank you.
And through the chair, I'd like to also thank staff and Commissioner Eggers and the members of the board and the members of the public and the building community that took time out of their lives to attend these meetings, whether it was in person in the beginning or Zoom. And I think we came up with a much more flexible product that actually served the purpose that it was meant to serve. And I cannot wait to get those in lieu fees codified.
That is next.
Thank you.
I would entertain a motion to
Go buy
let go
pizza?
of this meeting.
I make a motion to adjourn.
That's the guy, yes.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
7:21.
Thank you.
Very complicated. No, go ahead.
That's good work you said.